repeat myself too much, but happy to answer any questions. So yeah, the orchard went in 2018. We chose this site specifically, so as Brad was saying, it's some of the nicest soil on the farm. There's actually two different soil types here, believe it or not. The top side of you can see it kind of shelves up a little bit there. It's a little bit kind of slightly sandier, more well-drained soil type, makes it a little bit more droughty than down here at the bottom. So you can see we've got our replications actually run lengthways, and our rows of irrigation run this way. So each row, each column going that way has our 15 different initial varieties in there, and then a bunch more that we've been grafting in over the years. So split midway on each of these rows, so you can see the kind of high and the low input there. Really the low input there is just literally put in the ground and left. So we spray every now and again. Those little black, that's just tiled drainage tubing just around the base, just to protect them against drift from the don't really do anything, just kind of hand weed. Associated with this, so it's not going to work for everybody, but for us, where we were interested in experimentally in this issue of stress and moisture stress, water stress, it gives us a good experimental setup to be able to answer some of these questions about how water stress, nutrient stress affects both tree establishment and then later on fruit success. We were really hoping that we were going to have our first kind of decent crop of fruit this year, but those late crops really took care of a lot of the flowers, so maybe next year. So yeah, you can see the drip irrigation lines are actually underneath the landscape fabric here. We can turn off both the system as a whole, which is down towards the lake, you can see the riser, but we can also turn off individual rows as well if we want to switch sun in and out of more or less moisture.
What kind of water is it? Is it well water?
It's just well, yeah, so that little barn there is actually the well house. So
okay. Where's the placement of the emitters on this one? Where is it taped? Where are the holes, or where are the emitters for the drip?
So it just comes out of the line.
Of the line, okay, so it's everywhere.
Yeah,
down.
Just all the way along.
Probably thicker irrigation. It's inside the tubing, the emitters.
So it's like a slightly perforated, it's all the way along. So it's kind of,
what's your spacing again?
I think the spacing, was 8 foot.
8 and then
I think maybe 12. I don't know. Do you remember, Brad?
It's 15.
Was it 15 or 8 and 15?
So that's a little bit tight.
It's small. It's kind of what people were doing 8-9 years ago when we asked folk what you were doing. I think now a lot of people are saying they're going a little bit wider. But
I've got a question about trees that are right next to each other. And the reason why I'm asking is my brand new orchard I planted with seeds, like 4 seeds in each spot. It basically looks just like this, except 4 seeds. And so you got the classic case of 2 that just are perfect in the same spot. Is there really a conflict between them? I know that they suffer and there's a lot of regrowth from roots and stuff like that. Are they going to really compete? Or is that just some redundancy? You just say, yay, I'll just take both.
So as they look to, the competition will get more intense as the trees get older. Right?
Yeah.
So, if you're in that early establishment phase, I would leave them.
And
then
who knows what's going to happen?
Right. Because we do get random events of mortality, as Chris was commenting on the wind. We have had a few trees snap just when the storms have come through. So we have had.
Leave them up to this level at least.
Yeah.
And always cut it down.
And cut it down, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that answers one of my main questions.
They're tougher than most people give them credit for. So you could even leave them a couple of years and probably dig them both up, respace, reuse one somewhere else, and plant them
and
again.
possibly just leave them. Just completely leave them. Yeah. Okay.
Matt, is this like an open vase kind of pruning thing you're doing?
Yeah, so that was an experiment that we started this year. So some folk have, I think it was mentioned in one of the previous talks, there's not really any guidance on pruning methods or training methods for pawpaws. So we just started this year. So actually, just to explain the layout a little bit more, the first column here, so you can see there's the high input and then the low input where it's all scorched. This first row is actually just a guard row of seedling trees, so there's no varieties in here at all. It's just, kind of standard practice in experimental orchards to have that guard row. And then the two very middle trees at the other end of the high input and the start of the low input, those are also guard rows, and there's another guard row on the other side. They're just purely seedling trees. We use it for some grafting experiments, and we're going to use it for some pruning experiments too. So we're trying this, open vase, kind of like 3 leader style pruning here, which is something that like some local growers had asked us about. The furthest away guard row is a lot younger, and we have a slightly crazy plan to try and espaliate them if we can get the funds to get the hardware in. Some of the other things you can see going on here, actually Sarah and I were just out the other day. You can see we've got some new grafts on some of these guard row trees here. That's part of our SARE funded project where we're doing reciprocal grafting experiments between our woodlands. So over it, you can just see the corner of the Waterman Farm woodlot behind the barn over there. That's where we have some of our experimental woodland patches. And again, we had this question about what's controlling the limited fruiting success in these woodland settings? Is it the genetics of the trees? Is it the light environment? Is it the nutrient environment? Is it competition? So what we've got is this reciprocal grafting experiment where we take exactly the same site. We can take material out of the woods, graft them onto trees in open grown conditions, and then look at whether or not we still see limited fruiting success on these trees. And we're taking scion wood in those woods from trees that we either know we've never seen to be productive or we know to be productive. Put them out here and say, okay, now you've got everything that you need, now what are you going to do? And likewise, we can take material from these trees that we know to be productive and put them into the woodlands and see what we do. We begin to be able to ask some of those questions about growing conditions versus hardwired genetics as the limitations on what's going on in woodland settings. Yeah, but it's interesting to look at the orchard now. Some of the data I showed you on the initial survival suggested that the low input took a bit of a hit in the first year. And we certainly had to replant a lot more over there. We got some mortality, but I mean, just to look at it now visually, you don't see a massive difference at this point. So all this investment was kind of, it's great. It definitely gave them an easier start, but 3-4 years on, those differences that we are seeing in water stress, we're not really seeing it so much, and that's not surprising. The tree's got a big, long, massive taproot, so if you get it over that initial survival hurdle, really they don't need very much. Indeed, at our other site where we've been doing those interplanting experiments and creating those kind of mixed nut and pawpaw orchards, we just stuck them in the ground. We had 90% in the middle of a pasture and didn't do really any weed control or anything. We still had 90% survival. I mean, they're growing pretty slowly and looking pretty stressed. This could definitely alleviate that. So it's a big investment. It's great for experimental purposes, but a lot of what you see here could easily be done just with normal mulching, plastic mulch, or just that's definitely valuable in the first couple of seasons. But maintaining in perpetuity a complex drip and fertigation scheme is probably not what most growers do.
How many trees are we looking at here? Roughly.
Oh, you can ask me.
You have to count. Right.
Let me do it. I can do it. It's a bunch.
Yeah.
And if you want to know what varieties we've got in here, we're happy to try and figure that out.
13 or so per.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're 15 by 15 by 30. Whatever that is, 300, 450 trees. And then this is replicated at that site in Piketon as well.
So this may be the biggest orchard in North America.
If you count Piketon as well, then it
Okay,
definitely
yeah.
is.
I think so.
Sacrilegious.